I didn't realize I was dating a narcissist until it was too late. I met this guy when I was 20. Let's call him Zach, from my girlfriend. Her boyfriend at the time's cousin came to this gathering me, and her put together. Fast forward, a couple months later we started dating. Everything was good, but he became toxic after we started getting serious. Around 6 months into dating, he was jealous, being controlling, and he would tell me that no one could ever love me like he does, and I should be grateful I have him. It was mostly mental abuse during the early stages. Fast forward, when I was freshly 23, I found out I was pregnant with my daughter and he was not happy about it. We got into a huge argument about it and he even told me I should consider abortion. I told him he was crazy to even think of doing that. It was totally unexpected, but I knew I wanted to keep my baby as soon as I found out. That argument was the first time he ever did something physical. He did not hit me, but he threw a cup at the wall only about a foot away from me. I didn't know what to expect of him now that he was throwing things at me, so it was always like I was walking on eggshells around him. After a little bit, he got used to the odds of having a baby, but the problem was when we found out the gender. He threw a fit saying girls are useless, and they don't do anything but complain. That's the first time he put his hands on me. He slapped me across the face when I screamed at him, telling him if he can't accept the baby no matter what she is, then he shouldn't be a father. When he slapped me across the face, it was like a reality check. My father unfortunately abused my mom during my childhood, and when he slapped me, it was like a instant flashback to my childhood. My pregnancy was pretty normal. Nothing really out of the ordinary. It getting closer to my little girl being born while me and his 4th anniversary is approaching as well. The delivery was actually quite nice. He was supportive, and for a second I thought my daughter would help us heal our relationship. It was hell the first 5 months. She wouldn't sleep and I had quit my part-time job, so I was the one taking care of her. Zach had a successful job that was providing for us, but I did have a part-time job so we could afford some more luxuries and not just the basics. The abuse just kept getting worse and worse over time, and he became physical more often until every time we would argue, he would put his hands on me. Each time I would always think hard about our relationship, and if I should get out. ATP has manipulated me to thinking I was nothing without him and never will be. This is when family and friends started to notice, and I basically isolated myself from everyone we know. Once my daughter started getting older, and now was starting to speak and get into that toddler stage, I knew that she would start remembering it, and I used to cry in the shower about that. I was in a dark place. I had no family or friends. I was struggling as a mom, and if I did decide I wanted to leave, I would have to start working again, and it was a hassle. I think my last straw was this one day where 2 sets of things happened. My daughter had a play date over, and I noticed she was aggressive and even hit her friend for taking her crayon. The kid was fine, and the parent was only pissed off. Later that evening, I asked my daughter why did she do that to her friend, and she told me I saw Daddy do it to you. That was the most heartbreaking thing I've heard, especially as a mother. That night, I had a dream that my daughter was a teen around 10 years later, and Zach would do the same thing to my daughter as to me. That day was about 1.5 years ago. Once I got approved for apartment, I packed very few things and stayed in a hotel until I could move in. Me and my daughter are now living in an apartment 35 minutes from my ex, and I got full custody. Us women need to look out for each other, and if you see someone in an abusive relationship, speak up.
I left my abusive relationship of 4 years, 7 months ago now. He was mainly an emotional and mental abuser. He constantly threatened to hit and murder me. He always said it in a joking manner, but deep down I could tell it wasn't a joke. In March of last year, we got into a huge fight over groceries and he threw something at me. Then he got in my face and said he was going to hit me. As stupid as it sounds, I told him to do it. I remember his fists clenching out of the corner of my eye, but he didn't follow through with it. This was when I realized I was in an abusive relationship. A few days later, I told him to go to therapy or move out because I was worried he was going to become physical. I know now him throwing something at me is physical abuse. He chose therapy and things were honestly better for a few months. We even looked at rings and I tried a few on. Then in November of last year, he got mad at me and put his hand around my throat. It was like a light went off in his eyes. I have never seen someone go black. Looking back, I'm lucky he snapped out of it. After he said his intimidation and controlling dialogue, he removed his hand and said he shouldn't have done that. He didn't apologize until later that week. I knew it was time to leave because it was only going to get worse. I told him to find somewhere to live and was nice about it until he left. He moved out about 6 weeks later. Now we're no contact. The first few months after I was dissociating badly, nothing felt real, and I was living in a heavy fog. I had a couple nightmares of him. I felt exhausted but also energized. My body was adjusting to not being in a constant state of fight or flight. My skin finally started to heal, and slowly I started sleeping better. I know I'm one of the lucky ones. I got out before it was extreme. Now that it's been almost 5 months of no contact, I finally am starting to feel like myself again. I can sleep through most nights without waking up or having nightmares. My face is almost completely cleared. I wish there was more education on emotional and mental abuse. I always told myself if a man ever put his hands on me, I would leave. And I did. But I wish I would have known to set boundaries when it came to the manipulation, gaslighting, controlling, and degrading behaviors. The abuse began slow and creeped into a monster. You don't even realize what's happening until you're in the trenches of it. Friends, family tried to tell me, but I wouldn't listen. I know some of the wounds I have are so deep they'll take years to heal. I still don't believe I'm fully deserving of a healthy love. I still don't believe I'm as great of a person as I am. Being consistently belittled and brought down does something to your psyche. This has been the most difficult thing to heal because it's become so ingrained. I believe if I would have stayed, I eventually would have been hurt badly or killed. I tried leaving multiple times but was never strong enough because it wasn't a black eye, or he wasn't hitting me so it could always be worse, or I believed his apologies and promises for change. That is the worst mindset, and I wish I could tell every person to never excuse someone's behavior. The worst part of it all is, even after all the trauma, I still want the best for him. I still find ways to blame myself. I still question if the abuse was that bad. I feel like I'm doing well, but I also think it's because my brain has blocked out so much of the bad that I'm unable to think about how much I was drowning at the time. So many women in my family, including my mom, have been or are in abusive relationships. I'm thankful I broke the cycle.
Last straw. He did several things what breached my trust, many of them involving other women. Instead of apologizing and making things better, he would either miss the point on purpose or he would change the subject on purpose. End of the background story. There was this evening when he was looking at something on his phone while I was tying my shoe. I, out of curiosity, asked him what he was looking at, but instead of showing me like a normal person, he slightly raised his voice and radically refused to show me. How the conversation continued. Me. Well, if you keep acting like this, you should not wonder that I no longer trust you, keeping in mind that you made several other mistakes which made me stop trusting you.
Next. Well, me meet often enough. We are never bored together. There is always some form of spontaneity. So why would I cheat on you?
Me. Regarding this situation, this might rather be something you would want to ask your own self.
Next. This building is really beautiful. What do you think?
Me. You know what? Your little manipulative tactic is no longer working on me.
Next. Doesn't say any word. Just leaves me standing and goes home.
I then tried to communicate through text what happened. He kept leaving me on read. I then told him that if he keeps doing so, I will break up with him. Didn't care. Left that one message on read too. First text from him comes next morning to ask me if I would attend the lesson we have together. Instead of answering him the question, I broke up with him. How I am doing. I am extremely relieved that I am no longer dating him. I had a short phase when I would enjoy attention from other dudes to the core, but now I am fully focused on myself and my own development. I still have flashbacks about the negative moments, but I can't remember any good one. It's like the few good times deleted themselves out of my head. I am on my journey to tap into my feminine energy, hyper aware of my surroundings, because we attend the same university, and the odds of him stalking me are above zero. Every time I see him, I internally make fun of him. I do lots of research on narcissism, sociopathy, and toxic relationships. How long it has been since I left him. Beautiful 4 months.
Like, subscribe, and leave a comment. There will be a lot more cool content and you will help me a lot.